Hi, I'm Rashonda. I'm the creator of ArtByRow.com, where I help hobby artists grow by teaching them how to focus on the process rather than the outcome. I specialize in developing creativity, creating more art in less time, and using graffiti art to generate ideas instead of always wondering what you should be working on. If this sounds like something you'd be interested in, subscribe so you get notified whenever new videos get uploaded. Now let's head on over to the art studio and do some drawings. We're going to work on today's tutorial together. Let's head on over. All right, so welcome to the studio. Today we are going to do a Cubism portrait. And this week it is the weekly challenge in the Facebook group. And one of the members in there was asking about how to get started, needed a little bit of a kickstart. So I told her I'd make this video just to kind of help her get started and give a little bit of an illustration. So here we go. We're going to make a Cubism portrait. So first of all, these are really good if you feel like you don't have the best drawing skills, if you're learning, or maybe you're just not really good at doing portraits. Maybe you have an interest in drawing people, but you don't feel like you're that good at it. And usually when people want to draw portraits or, something where they're drawing from life, it's always to get realism. But sometimes just to get yourself in that realm, so to speak, you can do something more abstract just to get you in there, dip your toes in the water a little bit, and just get you involved in those different things and to kind of relax a little bit. So for this Cubism portrait, so really there's no rules to doing this. You want it to look a little crazy, but we're still going to start with some basic shapes. So you can draw a circle, oval. There's really no limits. You could do a square, a triangle. It doesn't really matter for these. But you want to give yourself some guidelines to start off with. So I'm going to start laying in some geometric shapes for this one. And this is just one way to draw a Cubism portrait. So I'm just going to start laying in these geometric shapes. So this is going to be the nose. This is going to be one eye. And then this will be the other eye. And don't be afraid to go outside of the shape of the head. That can sometimes give you a really cool look to your Cubism portraits. So I have my eyes, my nose, and then my mouth. I'm going to come out this way a little bit. And that's where my mouth is going to go. So one of the other things with Cubism is that you can combine a profile view with a front view. So you could do your eyes looking straight and your nose off to the side. It doesn't really matter. You want it to look like a portrait when you're done, but that's pretty much it. That's the only thing you're going for, is that you want it to be recognized as a person. So I'm going to start with this eye over here. And then there's a lot of different ways you can draw each element as well. So you definitely don't want them to look realistic. I shouldn't say definitely, because maybe you do. If you want your Cubism portrait to look more realistic, and by that I mean like the elements as far as like the eyes, the nose, you could make them more realistic. So I'm doing this eye looking straight ahead. This eye is going to be looking off to the side. The nose I'm just going to keep real simple. I'm just going to add a couple nostrils in there, and I'm going to make them 2 different sizes, just for fun. You can do whatever you want with these. There's really no rules. You want them to look a little crazy? Have fun with it. Art should be fun. So here's my mouth. I'm going to put some nice big teeth. And I'm drawing these very simplified. I'm not trying to add in a lot of detail. So the teeth, for example, they're all going to be even, which if you were drawing an actual portrait, the teeth wouldn't look that way. The gaps in the teeth aren't completely lined up. So there's my elements of the face. For the neck, because I don't want this floating in midair, I think I'm going to have my neck come off to the side. So it's kind of sticking out a little bit. So now we need to do the shape of the face, the hair, and the ears. So I want to do the shape of the face first and sort of frame it in with where the hair's going to go. And again, you can do this however you want. I'm going to have the hair come around this way. And then I think because I want these sections to stick out, I think I'm going to go ahead and put the face here. And then same thing on this side. I want this to stick out further than the face, just because that's the look I'm going for. Bring the chin down. And then the ears, same thing with the ears as everything else. You can make them however you want. I'll put one ear up over here, one ear down here, make them uneven. You don't want things to be symmetrical. You want them to be a little crazy. And these are a lot of fun. Like I said, you can do pretty much whatever you want with these. Anything goes. I'm going to put a little bit of a shirt in here so we don't have just a neck and a floating head. Put a little collar on the shirt maybe. And these are really, really fun to make. And there's a lot of different ways you can draw them and experiment with them. So the only thing left to do now is to draw the rest of the hair. And you can do this again however your little heart desires. Doesn't matter. These are just fun. And I'm doing mine on an artist trading card. This is a piece of cardstock that was cut into an artist trading card. And I really like doing this type of drawing on artist trading cards because they don't take a lot of time to make. And then you can put them in a portfolio or you can trade them. So now that I have all these basic shapes down, all the elements are in place. Something that's, I guess, kind of common with Cubism is to break up the big areas. So I'm putting some lines in here, which are going to act a little bit as some indications of like strands of hair, but also because it's going to break up the sections of color. And again, you're not doing this in the same way that you would if you were drawing something more realistic. We're going to actually make these sections different colors. So you can do the same thing with the face. And this is sort of random for the most part. It's not, I'm just looking for big chunks of color, and then I'm splitting it up with some lines. I'm not putting a ton of thought into it. I'm just looking at areas. This area to me is too big. So I'm going to add a line in there and break it up. Same thing with the hair. So that's it for the sketch. So now we are going to do the outline. So there's a lot of different ways you can do your outline. You could use a color. I like using these black Sharpie pens. You can use a big marker. You can use like a really thin outlining marker. You can make your line weights variation. You could use a brush pen. However you want to do your outline, that's completely up to you. And a lot of that is going to depend on what your own artistic style is, what you think looks good. You might want to go in and make these shapes around the elements thicker. Add a little bit of line weight to these. Go in and make them a little more bold, so they stand out from the rest of the lines. Which, that's another thing that I like about using the artist trading cards to do my artwork. Because they're so quick to make them, because they're smaller work. And if you don't use artist trading cards, that's just what I use, because I like that they fit into a binder. And I can use that binder as a portfolio to go back through and look at some of the artwork that I've done. Even if you don't use artist trading cards, working small really helps to give yourself a little bit more freedom to experiment. If I was doing this on a big piece of paper, or if I was doing this in my sketchbook, it would take me much longer to finish just because of the size of it. And the artist trading card sometimes can feel a little too small. It's hard to get in there and get the details. But if you're drawing something that will work on a smaller scale, I really love doing the artist trading cards. It really gives you a lot of freedom to experiment and play around, because if you mess up, it's not a big deal. You just grab a new card and try again. But what I like to do is to work on a series of drawings. So like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is the weekly challenge in the Facebook group. So the challenge is to do 7 drawings in 7 days. And every week there's a new theme or a new subject for the weekly challenge. And the reason I do this is because I started doing this for myself a while back, doing these weekly challenges and doing a series of drawings. And it really, really helps with the creativity aspects of your work. Because if you only do one of something, you're going to do whatever comes to mind first, which is probably going to be maybe whatever your usual method is for working. Like, you kind of can get stuck in a rut if you're not pushing yourself to do multiple drawings of something. So, for example, if you like to draw people, you probably make your people very similar to each other. Like, you have a certain way that you work, and it's kind of the same every time. And a lot of people feel like they're sort of stuck a little bit and they don't feel creative. And these are just things that I hear people complaining about, or, you know, just kind of expressing that they feel sort of locked into something. They don't feel like they have much creativity. They're kind of bored with their own artwork. And by doing these series of drawings, which doing them on the artist trading cards makes it a lot quicker. By doing the series, it gives you a little bit more freedom to try new things and experiment. And if you do, like just as an example, the 7 in 7 days, you're going to try new things, you're going to play around, you're going to experiment, because for one thing, by the 3rd or 4th one, if you're doing it the same, you're going to get bored. Okay, so we got our outline. And you can go back in and darken it up wherever you want to darken it up at. You can have some line variation in there, however you want to do it. You could go in and bold the outline around the edge, whatever you want to do. So the next thing is to add some color. And normally I like to use multiple markers for each section, but we want this to look a little bit more plain, a little bit flat. So for this one, we're going to just stick with solid colors in each of the sections. So I'm going to grab myself some markers and I will be right back with you. Okay, so a good rule of thumb, especially on something like this, when you're adding in the color, is to use the rules of 3, which basically just means that whatever color you use, so I'm using this yellow, the rule of 3 just says that you should use the same color in 3 different places. So in a drawing like this, it's really easy because where we put the colors doesn't really matter unless you're going for some kind of a specific look. So you can do 3. So basically the rule of 3 is just that 3 would be the minimum. And if you want to do more, you want to do odd numbers. So you would do 3, 5, 7. And I have this little piece of cardstock. These are left over from cutting the artist trading cards. I use this to test out my colors. Normally I do it when I'm trying to blend the colors together, but you can use it just to see how the color works. These markers, they're not something I normally use because it's a set that my boss got for me, and I don't know where she got them at, but they're just a cheap set that she seen somewhere. She knew I liked using markers, so she thought of me and she got them for me. But there's not a lot of, the colors don't really go together, so as far as trying to blend them, you need the colors to be fairly similar. And some of them are, like these 2 colors would blend together, but it's just it's a very limited color palette. So it's like these reds are a little different from the colors I would normally use. So all I'm doing is picking some different areas. I'm grabbing a marker, testing it out on my piece of scrap paper, just so I know what the marker is going to actually look like and I don't get some kind of crazy color I don't want. And these markers work good for this because they have that nice point. They get into these small sections real nice. And I'm just kind of trying to spread them out a little bit. I like to avoid having the same color right next to each other, but it's not really it's not a rule or anything like that. It's just the look I go for. You could have the same color side by side. That's not going to ruin your artwork by any means. It's just a personal preference. So I'm really just randomly filling in these blocks of color. And if you want a smaller color palette, that would be fine too. You could pick a limited amount of colors. Maybe you only want to use 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. If you want to limit it, you could do only warm colors or only cool colors. Which again, and this is why I like doing those 7-day challenges. You could make your drawings similar to each other in the style that they're in. And then you could play around with different color combinations as your variation for your 7 drawings for your series. You could do like one like this where it's just kind of patchwork and you just got a bunch of random colors in here. You could try one where maybe you try one where you do 5 of each color. And then see where that leads you. Or maybe you do more than that. Maybe you want to do 7 of each and see what that looks like. Maybe you only want to use 3 markers, and however many times you use each one, it's just whatever it is. There's a lot of different things you can try doing. And when you're doing this, because as I'm sitting here doing the color, adding the color in, and I'm talking about it, and I'm coming up with these different ideas, now I'm thinking, wow, I wonder what would it look like if you used only 3 colors? What would it look like if you only used warm colors? What would it look like if you only used cool colors? Or maybe, what would it look like if you used only blue or only purple or only brown? Like, there's so many different things you can do. And as you start doing these and you start pushing yourself to get out of your comfort zone a little bit, you'll find that you'll start coming up with more and more ideas. So if at first you're trying to think of some different things and you just feel blocked and you can't come up with any ideas, the best thing to do is to get started. And once you're working on it, and as you're picking out your colors, you can start thinking, what if I did this? Or what if I did that? What would this look like? So this blue, I'm using more than the rest of it. I'm not sure why, that just kind of happened. And maybe you want to use colors that are more pale. Like a pastel palette. These are all different things that you can try doing that, I need one more color. This last color is only going to be in 2 areas, which is okay. The rule of 3 isn't something that can't be broken. We all know that in art, as they say, the rules are made to be broken. It just helps if you think about using a color 3 times. It just makes the decision process a little bit quicker. And I don't remember, I want to say the rule of 3 actually comes from composition. And the reason that you do the 3 is to create harmony in your artwork, because it probably doesn't matter as much with something like this where you're just kind of playing around and having fun. But if you're actually selling your artwork, or if you're involved in art shows, you need to consider how the eye moves around the piece of art. And that rule of 3 is to help kind of control, I guess you could say, the movement of the eye from the viewer around the work of art, if I remember correctly. It's been a long time since I've been in art classes, but okay. So this one we are going to call Finished. These are fun. They're really low pressure, or should be, because there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's not like you can really mess it up. I think they're a lot of fun. There's a lot of different ways you can do them with the geometric shapes, starting out with the geometric shapes or not. You could do something where you combine a profile view with a front view, where you make your shape and then you kind of do a profile in the middle of it, and then some of the elements of it are facing forward and some are facing off to the side. Just a lot of different ways that you can work on these. And like I said, they're really a lot of fun, and they're a good one to experiment with and try new things. And maybe you're trying to use a new medium. Maybe you're trying to use paint, which in that case, you could work a little bit larger. I would still say to work small, especially if you're just trying to learn. But for an example, say you want to learn how to use acrylic paints and you just need to come up with ideas. Something like this would be really good just to get used to applying the paint and learning how the paint works and how it flows, because you're just filling in the blocks of color. So that would be a good one to practice. You could do colored pencils, watercolors, whatever you want to do. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you try some on your own and think about working small and doing a series of drawings and trying to push yourself and get yourself outside of your comfort zone. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you soon. Happy creating! So how did you do? Hopefully you followed along with the tutorial and worked on your own artwork. If you enjoyed this and you want to get notified of other lessons that are coming up in the future, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and you'll get notified whenever something new gets uploaded. Have a good day and happy creating!